Okay, I want to thank you for joining me here on Parashah 6. And again, Parashah just means portion. We are on the Torah portion of Genesis 25:19 through 28:9. And this is one of the saddest ones that I read, I teach. It's entitled History or Toldot. But the Hebrew word toldot doesn't necessarily mean history. And this is one of the things as we look at this, helps us to give us a better understanding. When we think back in Genesis 25, back in Genesis 6, I think it is, we have the story of Noah. And this is where we first find in Torah this word toldot that we see at the beginning of Genesis 6:9. And it's the same word that we are beginning our teaching with today, toldot, which sometimes is referred to as history, but that's really not necessarily a good explanation of that word when we're looking at the English. Toldot means offspring or generation, and it also helps us to narrate the history of what is going on. It gives us insight into the people and their character and maybe what is going to happen. One of the things we see within the Bible is oftentimes people's names mean something. It can give us insight into something that is going to happen to them in the future, or maybe it gives us insight into their character. Just as this word toldot, meaning offspring or generations, and it narrates the history. So as we look at the word toldot, the root is yud lamed dalet, just some Hebrew letters, which mean to produce an issue. And we see that some commentaries on the story of Noah say that it does not have to be understood as chronological, but as character. Now, I'm going to get a little out of this. If it's too deep for you, hang here with me because we're going to move on to the story. So again, toldot can relate to us the character of someone, kind of like the name. And when I think of names, I think of the book of Ruth, Naomi's two sons, Machli and Malin, I think. One of them always slips my mind, but basically their names mean sickly and puny, and they both die. So as we look at this, we can see that toldot, this history or offsprings or generation, can relate to us the character of the character. So in Genesis 25:19, when we see this word toldot or generations, we can see that it's going to give us insight into these people or their offspring. So as we start off with Genesis 25:19, it says, here's the history of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac. Well, is that the history of Isaac? Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rivkah and daughter of Bethuel, the Aramee from Padan Aram, and the sister of Laban, and it tells us who he married. And then it says that Isaac prayed to Adonai on behalf of his wife because she was childless. His wife, Rebecca, is suffering some of the very same things that his mother did. Sarah was barren, and now we see that Rebecca is barren. But one of the things we see here is Isaac is praying for her. We don't necessarily see that Abraham prayed for Sarah to have a child. Maybe he did, maybe it just wasn't recorded. But we see that Isaac is praying to Adonai on behalf of his wife because she was childless. And it says Adonai heeded his prayer, and Rebecca became pregnant. And the children, so she's going to have twins. The children fought with each other inside her so much that she said, if it's going to be like this, why don't go on living? These kids were really struggling, probably, kicking at each other, pushing them down. And so she just really, was having a difficult time. And it says, so she went to inquire of Adonai. And again, we know Adonai is the Yed He Vav He, the tetragrammaton, the presence in the burning bush. So we see that she went on her own to inquire of Adonai. She had a relationship with Adonai. She could pray to Adonai. She could inquire. And it says that Adonai answered her, told her there are two nations in your womb. There's going to be two people groups in your womb. And from birth, they will become two rival people. Well, that's just what a mom wants to hear. She's having twins. They're both going to be, two nations against each other, and they're going to be rival people. And so one of these people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So right there's some insight as to what is going to take place in their life, in her life, and also Isaac's life. They're going to have a struggle with these twins. These boys are going to be at it. And it's going to be a little bit different than what we normally see, that the way things should have been done. Again, the younger is going to be served by the older. And when we understand the culture, normally it was the older, the firstborn, who got the double portion, who was in charge of the estate, who would be the spiritual leader. And so Adonai is telling her, this isn't the way it's going to be. You're not going to have a normal family. But then I guess, who does? So when the time came for her to deliver, there were twins in her womb, and the first came out was reddish and covered all over with hair, like a coat, and they named him Esau, completely formed, that is, having hair already. And then his brother emerged with his hand holding Esau's heel, so he was called Yaakov, the one that catches by the heel. It's also called the deceiver, the supplanter, but it's really the one who catches by the heel. And Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. And the boys grew, and Esau became a very skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman. He was kind of a man's man. While Jacob, Yaakov, was a quiet man. He stayed in the tents. Now, some people paint this as a mama's boy, but he really wasn't. He was staying in the tents. He was staying in the camp, so to speak. Remember, they had a lot of people they were responsible for. They had servants. They had flocks and herds, very wealthy. And someone had to learn how to manage all this. You had to have insight into the different animals and the breeding cycles and where to take them and what their needs were, food-wise, water-wise, and then you had all these people. And so we see really that Jacob, Yaakov, he was the one who was, I'll say, learning how to be a supervisor of the estate. And then there's the hint there that he was also learning about the spiritual things. So Esau was the hunter, and Isaac favored Esau because he liked the taste of game, and Rivkah favored Jacob. She knew what Adonai had told her. Now, did she ever tell this to her husband? It's not told. Maybe she did, but I kind of think she did not. But one of the problems we have right here is Daddy has his favorite and Mama has her favorite. And Mama and Daddy didn't really discuss maybe what Adonai had told her about these boys. So one day when Jacob had cooked some stew, Esau came in from the open country. He was exhausted. He says, let me gulp down some of that red stuff. That red stuff. I'm exhausted. I'm about to die. Well, he wasn't about to die. He just was hungry and maybe didn't want to, go fix him a sandwich, so to speak. He wanted some of that stew. An interesting thing, and this is just a tradition, that normally when you see this red stuff, this red stew, red lentil stew, it's associated with a time of mourning. And many people believe that Abraham had died. Now, Abraham had been alive. And so the boys would have known their grandfather Abraham. They would have heard the stories from him. And he would have still been pretty much kind of in charge of things. And maybe this was a reason that Jacob stayed in the camp, stayed in the tents. He was listening to his grandfather Abraham tell the stories about God and the one true God and Adonai and how he was called out and being in relationship and understanding about sacrifices. And so we can see that this possibly is referring us to Abraham having died, and this was a mourning meal, so to speak. So Jacob answered him. He says, first sell me your rights as the firstborn. And Jacob said, swear to me. And so he swore to him. So we see that Esau legally did sell his rights as the firstborn to his twin brother, who was born after Esau was. He was the second. So he truly sells him the right as the firstborn. And Esau shows how little that he values this right as the firstborn, because he says, what good is it to me? What use to me are my rights as a firstborn? Well, he could have been thinking a little bit, what good are my rights as a firstborn? Because my dad's still alive. So technically, I haven't inherited yet because dad still has it. But again, he should have understood, but he was a hunter. He was an outdoorsman, and we're going to see a little later on that maybe he was a womanizer. Seems like he likes his women because he winds up with several wives and from people groups that the family didn't really approve of. So Esau showed how little he valued his birthright. A birthright back then was a great matter of importance. People understood it. It was just something that was very valuable. And so it was just like you saying, who cares? You know, so he was really devaluing, I will say, his heritage, what his family background was, but also what his grandfather Abraham had amassed as an estate for them. So when we look at Genesis 26, we see a famine comes over the land. And, we see that a lot, famines coming over the land. When we read the Bible, we see a lot of patterns and parallels, repeats. One time I heard that people had to repeat the same mistake 5 times before they ever learned the lesson. Lord help us not to have to do some of that with some situations. But we see sometimes that they repeat some of the same stories. So in Genesis 26, a famine came over the land. It wasn't like the first famine that took place when Abraham was alive. And Isaac went down to Gerar, and the Avimelech, the king, Avi is father, Melech is king, so it's my father, my king, Avimelech, king of Philistine. And Adonai appeared to him and said, don't go down into Egypt, but live where I tell you to. Stay in this land. So as we see, it's interesting. I'm not going to go into the full story, but what we see is they are repeating the same story. Isaac and Rivkah are repeating the same story that Abraham and Sarah did. Abraham and Sarah, they were going into this land, and they were half brother and sister. And he said, hey, the ruler here, he likes good looking women, and if he knows you're my wife, he'll just kill me and take you. So say you're my sister to protect me. And so she did, and he finds out. So here we see kind of a repeat of this because Isaac's saying, hey, you're a good looking woman, and they might kill me to take you. So, it's the same story. So, go along with me here. And so Avimelech, somebody says, she's your wife after all. So, the gig's up. So we see that he tells him, go on and get out of here. But we see that he even becomes more rich and prospered more and more. And so it is a great wealth that Isaac and Rebekah have. And we see that there are some issues with some of the herdsmen, with the Philistines. They are, when Isaac will dig up a well that had been dug during the time of his father, they would fill it in, or he would uncover it, or they would uncover it, and so there was this fighting going on. So I want to kind of get past chapter 26. I know I didn't do it justice, but I want to move us on to this idea of Genesis 27. Because what we see is in the course of time, after Isaac had grown old and his eyes were dim, he couldn't see. And he called Esau his older son. And he says to him, my son. And he answered, here I am. He says, look, I'm old now, and I don't know when I'll die. Therefore, please take your hunting gear, your quiver of arrows, and your bow, and go out in the countryside and get me some game. Make it tasty, like you cook it. So we see that it wasn't just Jacob that could cook, but Esau also knew how to cook. So, you can't really say, well, one was a mama's boy and one, did all the cooking in the tent, and the other, because we see that Esau also knew how to cook. So his dad's telling him, make it tasty so I can eat it. And then I will give you my blessing in the presence of Adonai before my death. Now pay attention to me, my son, and do what I tell you. Excuse me, I got ahead of myself there. So he says, make it tasty. So Rivka, the mother, was listening. Now remember, she knew what Adonai had told her, that the older, that Esau would serve his younger brother, twin brother. And so, again, we don't know that she ever told her husband. So Rivka was listening, and she told Isaac, when Isaac was speaking to his son Esau. And so she calls Jacob, and she says to her son Jacob, I just heard your father telling Esau, your brother, interesting, your brother, not my son. So we see a little bit of your son, my son, your brother, but it says, Esau, your brother, bring me game, make it tasty, and then I'll give you my blessing. Now, pay attention to me, my son. So this is Rebecca telling her son, Jacob. She says, pay attention, go to the flock, bring me back 2 choice kids, and I will make it tasty for you, the way your father likes it. And you will bring it to your father to eat, so that he will give you the blessing before his death. Sad to say that this story is about 2 choice kids in both ways. There are 2 choice kids. There's Esau and his brother Jacob, but then there's 2 choice kids that Jacob is going to go and pull out of the flock. And his mother's going to cook it, and then he's going to go in and deceive his father. So we have these 2 choice kids in a very sad way. And Jacob answers his mother. He says, hey, Esau's hairy, I'm not. Suppose my father touches me. He'll know I'm trying to trick him, and I'll bring a curse on myself. And she says, don't worry about it. I'll take the curse on me. You just do what I'm telling you to do. So he went and he got these 2 kids. He brought them back. His mother fixed them. And then she even, the way it reads is she used the skins of these lambs to lay on his arms, so he would feel his hands, so he would feel furry, hairy, like his brother Esau. And so she prepared all this food. And then she said, go in and take this to your father. I think this is some of the saddest story, because here's a mother maybe that did not communicate with her husband what God had said. And then the parents were showing favoritism, which kind of pits children against each other. These are twins, so there's probably a little competitive spirit there anyway. And then the father realizes something's quite not right. So he goes unto his father and he says, my father? And he replied, here I am. Who are you, my son? That's a question. Who are you, my son? Are you here to deceive me, to trick me? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. Do you think he kind of choked on that? I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've done what you've asked me to do. Get up now, sit down, eat the game, and then give me your blessing. And Isaac said to his son, how did you find it so quickly, my son? And it's a question mark. My son, my son, would you really do this to me? My son, I don't think you're Esau. Would you really deceive me? Are you really my son? And he answered, Adonai, your God. He didn't say my God. He says, Adonai, your God made it happen that way. And Isaac said to Jacob, come here close to me, so I can touch you, my son, and know whether you are in fact my son Esau or not. Man, when I read this, I just want to cry for him. I just want to say, Daddy, no, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have tried to trick you. Esau sold the birthright to me legally, and I'm the one who should be blessed. It shows how little he valued it, but this didn't take place. It's so sad. Kids lie to their parents a lot of times. And so he says, come here. And Jacob approached Isaac, his father, who touched him and said, the voice is Jacob, but the hands are Esau's. He said, no, the hands are Esau's. And again, the voice is Jacob's and the hands are Esau's. Esau's hands maybe didn't do things that were right and good, that Jacob was really saying it, but he was using, I'll say, kind of hands of manipulation, because we see that Esau isn't always a good son, which again, none of us, are perfect. We've not always good kids. So he says, are you really my son Esau? He knows something's not right. He's giving him a chance, to repent. And isn't that like God? He gives us chances to repent. And we just keep hammering on through there sometimes. Are you really my son Esau? And he replied, I am. Bring it here, I'll eat my son's game so that I can give you my blessing. So he brought it in, he ate, he brought him the wine, and he drank. And then his father Isaac said to him, come close now and kiss me, my son. I always think about how Judas betrayed Yeshua, Jesus, with a kiss. How could he do that? But it's one of those things, he probably was in it so far, he had to keep up the charade his mother told him to. Very sad, because his father didn't know that Esau had sold the birthright. So he says, come here and let me kiss you, my son. And he approached and he kissed him, betrayed with a kiss. And Isaac smelled his clothes, because Isaac had on the clothes of Esau. He basically was imitating. He had put on the robe of the deceiver. And so we see that Esau will try to deceive later on too. And he smelled his clothes and he blessed Jacob with these words. See, my son smells like a field which Adonai has blessed. So may God give you dew from heaven and richness of the earth and grain and wine in abundance. May people serve you and nations bow down to you. Well, this basically was what Adonai had told his mother that was going to happen. Why didn't she share it? But sometimes husbands and wives keep secrets from each other, and it causes problems. May you be Lord over your kinsmen. Let your mother's descendants bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. But as soon as Isaac had finished giving his blessing, Jacob went out, and we see in comes Esau, his brother, from hunting. And he too had prepared a tasty meal, and he brought it to his father. And now his father said to his father, let my father get up and eat from his son's game so that you can give me your blessing. And Isaac, his father, said to him, who are you? And he answered, I'm your son, your firstborn Esau. And Isaac began trembling uncontrollably. He said, then who was it that took game and brought it to me? I just ate all this, and I gave the blessing to him. And that's the truth, and the blessing must stand. And Esau heard his father's words. He burst into sobs. He was loud, crying. And he says, Father, bless me too, he begged. And his father says, your brother came deceitfully and took away your blessing. Again, Esau sold his right, the firstborn rights. Jacob did not deceive there. He did not take that away. Esau willingly sold it. And Isaac didn't know this. And Jacob had made him swear to him that he would sell him, all for a bowl of stew. And Esau said, his name, Yaakov, the supplanter, really suits him because he has supplanted me these 2 times. No, not 2 times. He says, he took away my birthright, and now he's trying to take away my blessing. No, he did not take away his birthright. Esau sold it. So Esau's trying to deceive his daddy. A lot going on in this story. And Isaac said, Esau, look, I've made him your Lord. I've given him the blessing. And I've given him grain and wine. And Esau weeps and he says, can't you bless me? And so Isaac does. And it's pretty much the same blessing that he gave to Jacob, except he left out about serving him. And Esau hated his brother over this. And Esau said to himself, the time for mourning my father will soon come. And then I will kill my brother Jacob. He was just thinking, Dad's going to die soon, and I'll take care of my brother. Kind of a Cain and Abel situation. Cain and Abel were probably twins. And the reason I say that is, I need to wrap this up, 24 minutes. Cain and Abel were probably twins. The reason I say that is because it says that Eve conceived and she bore Cain and Abel. Normally in the Bible, when you see If they're not twins, it will say, the woman conceived and bore, the woman conceived and bore. So we only see a one-time conception with Eve for Cain and Abel, and a one-time, obviously we're told though, that Esau and Jacob are twins. So basically Esau hates his brother because of the blessing his father had given him. And Esau said to himself, the time for mourning my father will soon come, and then I will kill my brother. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. And she sent for Jacob. And she said, your brother is comforting himself because he's planning on killing you. Boy, that's pretty vicious, isn't it? A twin brother comforting himself that dad's going to die pretty soon, and I'm going to kill my brother, and then I'll have all the estate. He knew he had sold it, but he didn't tell the truth. He was deceiving, and he was looking forward to the day that his dad would die. So she's trying to preserve Jacob because she knows the promise. And so she says, here, I'm going to send you back from where I'm from. I will send you to Laban, my brother, in Haran. And so Rivkah goes in and tells her husband, I'm sick to death of Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women, my life won't be worth living. So Isaac calls Jacob. He blesses him again. And he says, you're not to choose a wife from the Hittite women. Go now to the home of Bethuel, your mother's father, and choose a wife from there, from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May El Shaddai bless you. El Shaddai is how God presented himself to Abraham. El Shaddai, the God of all plenty. May he bless you, make you fruitful, increase your descendants until they become a whole assembly of peoples. And may he give you the blessing which he gave Abraham, you and your descendants with you, so they will possess the land. You will travel through the land God gave to Abraham. Now tell me, if Isaac was just so incensed at finding out what Jacob had done, why did he bless him again? Maybe Rivkah went and told him. Maybe some stuff was found out. Maybe he found out that Esau really did sell the firstborn rights, that Esau was waiting for his father to die so he could kill his brother. And he realizes Esau is not fit to have the estate, to be over and responsible for all the people that work for them. But more than that, Esau is not fit to be the spiritual leader of the clan. So he blesses him and he sends him away. In the day, if someone murdered someone and you really knew they did, the murderer was put to death too. So Rebekah was trying to save both sons, because on the day that Esau killed Jacob, she would lose both sons. So here we see that he is sent away, and it talks about Esau. And Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to choose a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he also charged him, do not take a wife from the Canaanite, and that Jacob had listened to his father and mother. Jacob listened to his parents. Esau, not so much. So Esau also saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac, his father. So what does he do? Esau goes to Ishmael. He goes to the house of Ishmael, because Ishmael is dead. So Esau goes to the house of Ishmael and took, in addition to the wives that he already had, he takes Machalat, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Navayot, to be his wife. So Esau now has 3 wives, and he has chosen wives from the groups of people that they do not get along with. He has intentionally done this to upset his parents. So Esau kind of has a woman problem. He tends to focus on the flesh, the natural, revenge, rebellion, and he really wasn't fit to be the spiritual leader. It wasn't God's plan. Thank you for joining me. And I tell you what, we're going to come right back as soon as I, get a drink of water, and we'll do Torah portion 7. And this one's a really good one, I think, because this is when Jacob is going to dream, and he's going to dream about the ladder and how this ladder represents Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah. So if you can, come back in a few minutes. If not, I hope you'll come back and listen to it. I thank y'all for joining me. We'll see you in a bit. Shalom.